While lawmakers are hard at work handling the state's business, a couple of floors below, a group of much smaller creatures is also on the job.
At this point, probably around 75 to 80 pounds of worms in there, and that equates to about 75 to 80,000 worms.
Much.
Who just love to eat what would otherwise be thrown into the trash. Each morning, just before 11, the worms get their midday and only meal.
And this basically is prep waste. So for instance, potatoes, lettuce when we're making salads, all that's going to go in the garbage, or did go in the garbage prior to this.
When they prepare those salads and other foods to be served in the legislative cafeteria, kitchen workers have about 40 pounds of scraps that are left behind. Those bits and pieces, combined with coffee grounds here, some paper there, and a few eggshells for good measure, are tantalizing.
What happens is that the worms will eat up to where the moisture is, and as they eat up, the bottom layer dries out and gets hard and crusted over. There are millions of them under there.
And eventually gets collected in a bucket and used as compost on the grounds of the legislative building. The worms don't exactly work quickly. 8 months of toiling only produces about 2 buckets of compost, but their wiggly work is still significant.
On an annual basis, we're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 or 9,000 pounds a year of waste that would have ended up in the landfill, and we're able to reduce it to compost that we can use here around the grounds of the General Assembly.
From the worm bin in the basement to the solar panels stationed on the roof, the North Carolina Legislative Complex is in the midst of a green makeover.
It provides up to about 70% of the hot water for the building.
And doesn't require a clump of coal to be burned in the process. The solar panels that provide much of the hot water in the Legislative Office building have replaced a steam system that relied on burning coal for power. The cold water in the Legislative Complex is also being used in a more environmentally friendly way. There are now low-flow toilets and sinks in the buildings and another major water-saving device underground.
There are 3 18,000-gallon tanks for a total of 54,000 gallons.
And whenever it rains around the legislative building, the water all winds up in those underground tanks, which are part of a cistern. Even when it's hot and dry, the cistern is still soaking.
On an annual basis, we will collect somewhere, or have the opportunity to collect somewhere in the neighborhood of 650,000 gallons of water from the air conditioning condensate. The plantings around the General Assembly is valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000. During the drought last year, if we didn't have the ability to irrigate with the system, the cistern system, we would have lost everything up here.
The legislative buildings are also flipping on more fluorescent bulbs to improve light efficiency, and switches with sensors that can turn the lights off when a room is empty. The greener game plan for state buildings isn't limited to just the legislative complex.
We were able to take care of those.
Michael Hughes of the State Construction Office says energy efficiency is a statewide initiative and part of a bill approved by lawmakers last year.
The main thing that the bill does is requires new state buildings to be 30% more efficient than current codes.
The new rules also require renovated buildings to be 20% more energy efficient than code. The department is also working to make existing buildings operate with less energy by inspecting heating and cooling systems and putting in better lighting. And the improvements don't end there.
The new buildings will have to use 20% less potable water inside the building and 50% less in the outdoor irrigation systems.
The product is pumping into the tank, but if you're looking for typical gasoline at this station, you're out of luck.
We don't buy any ordinary unleaded regular fuel. All of our gasoline is some content of ethanol. At
North Carolina's Motor Fleet Management Division, nearly 75% of the Chevys, Dodges, and Fords can run on E85, a fuel made of 85% ethanol. They can also run on the usual unleaded gasoline.
You have to do absolutely nothing. The electronic ignition adjusts the timing so that the vehicle operates just as good on one as it does the other.
Mike Pleasant's state-owned Ford Escape is giving him a way out of a frustrating situation for many Americans.
I'd say anywhere between 25 and 30 miles to the gallon.
Mike's finding his way to a lot fewer fuel pumps because he's hopping along in a hybrid. North Carolina owns more than 130 hybrid vehicles now, most of them Hondas and Toyotas. The state bought its first handful of hybrids in 2000. The increased gas mileage is great, but it's not the main mission.
We have not been as concerned about the fuel bill as we have about the air quality that we breathe and the emissions that come out the exhaust pipe of the vehicles.
Massey says even still, high gas prices have more people signing up to use the hybrids for state business. Back over at the Legislative Building, Jones Street's newest residents are also drawing a lot of attention.
When we're out, they'll stop by to take a peek at it. And of course, the first question they want to know is, are they good for fishing? And that's why we keep the lock on it.